Hi, welcome to this technical update on IBM Spectrum Protect version 8.1. In this presentation, I'll be covering what's new in the Spectrum Protect server and operations center, Spectrum Protect backup archive client, HSM for Windows, and the UNIX HSM portion of IBM Spectrum Protect. In a second YouTube, my colleague Sean Sperry will cover what's new in the Spectrum Protect for virtual environments and the additional Spectrum Protect ERP snapshot and data protection for SQL and Oracle. Spectrum Protect 8.1 announced on December 6, 2016, and it GA'd on December 9th, 2016. One of the first things you'll notice in version 8.1 is that the product has been completely rebranded inside of the actual code. Now the products will be referred to as IBM Spectrum Protect versus Tivoli Storage Manager. And this is true for our server, operations center, storage agents, client management services, as well as all of our backup archive clients, space managements, virtual environments, mail, database, ERP protectors, as well as Flash Copy Manager and Fastback for workstations. The products that will not be rebranded are Fastback and Sysback. The software and documentation for versions prior to 8.1 will continue to be known as Tivoli Storage Manager. Inside of the product, you'll see that Tivoli Storage Manager, or TSM, has been replaced with IBM Spectrum Protect in places like the Knowledge Center, the Tech Notes and Internet pages, any of the info, warning, and error messages, the GUI and command line interfaces, the graphic logos, the software management tools, the installers, start menus, and the query license and message outputs. On slide 4, first when you go to install the Spectrum Protect server, you'll see that the packages have been renamed to reflect IBM Spectrum Protect, and that the install manager package group has changed from IBM Tivoli Storage Manager to IBM Spectrum Protect. If you do have a previous version of Spectrum Protect, the package group names won't automatically be updated. If you do need the names changed from Tivoli Storage Manager to IBM Spectrum Protect, then you would just want to uninstall and reinstall the server to get the new names. The server installation directories and registry entries have not changed. You will see those still referencing TSM in the path. On the licensing, when you go to do a registered license inside of Spectrum Protect, you'll see that the licenses did not change names. The message and query license output, however, do show the new product name. So here, if you do the query license, you will see the Spectrum Protect options listed. For instance, Spectrum Protect Basic Edition, Spectrum Protect Extended Edition. If you do the register license command, you'll see you can still use that tsmbasic.lick. However, the new license will show it is supported for IBM Spectrum Protect Basic Edition. Another thing to notice is that the old offering names of things like TSM Basic or TSM EE now have new offering names referred to as Basic or EE. So if you do utilize the set product offering command inside of Spectrum Protect, you can either use the new offering names or the old offering names, which will still work but are no longer documented. When it comes to the device drivers, on Linux and Windows Spectrum Protect servers, the device configuration is the same as in earlier releases. So the Linux device name and script still use TSM. But on AIX, the SMIT panels have been updated to use IBM Spectrum Protect. The text messages and GUI panels have changed to use the new IBM Spectrum Protect name. If you look at the admin console or the command line prompt, you'll see that it now says Protect instead of TSM, as you see down here. And if you go into the Spectrum Protect server and actually using the server console, you'll see IBM Spectrum Protect in its prompt. The message names themselves have been reviewed, and where it's appropriate, we've replaced the names. So for instance, in this original message, we had please see TSM error logs for details, and now you'll see just a generic please see the error logs for details. Some of the oddities though, for instance in the German, originally we had Momentaufnahme Zurückschreibung fehlgeschlagen, weitere Details enthält das TSM Fehlerprotokoll. If you Googled that and tried to translate it, you'd see more details contain the TSM error log. However, now we will simply say weitere details enthält das Fehlerprotokoll, and the translation of that won't include TSM either. What is not changing? So the client installation files, unlike the Spectrum Protect server installation files, are not changing names. So you'll still see them referred to, for instance, as the TSM BAC. The client installation paths are not changing. The executable names remain the same. The API function calls are the same. The registry entries are the same. Any files created by the product, for instance, the error logs or the option files, still have DSM error log or DSM op file. Command lines or options with TSM will stay the same as well. In addition, all of our message numbers and prefixes have stayed the same, even though the message content might have changed. PowerShell commandlet names are the same, as are our Windows service names, and any of the existing white papers, red books, tech notes, etc. have not been updated. However, from version 8.1 forward, those will all contain the new IBM Spectrum Protect naming convention. Let's take a look at what's new in our Spectrum Protect server. The first big enhancement is the ability now to convert legacy storage pools for file, VTL, and tape into either directory or cloud container pools. In previous versions, we could only convert file or VTL into directory. This convert wizard is available through the Operations Center. If you go into storage pools, more convert, you can then select the pool you want to convert, and it'll give you the directory or cloud container pools that are available to convert to. We do recommend some additional space on the target pool. If it's a file pool, we suggest the target pool has about 30% more free space. More generally, if it's a VTL or tape pool, we suggest that the target pool has more free space than used space on the source pool. This additional space is just used during the conversion, and in the end you should actually see less space being utilized, because when you convert to the cloud or directory container pools, you will inherit that inline dedupe that is part of our container pools. When you go through this wizard, you can set up a schedule, because this conversion process might run more than one day. If the target pool is a directory pool, then you could schedule that conversion to run continuously, because there's probably very little conflict. However, if the target pool is a cloud pool, then you will be prompted to enter a limited conversion time and to stop the conversion prior to your backups. And the reason for this is we don't want your backups to be impacted by us writing out the conversion data to the cloud containers. If your source pool is file, this schedule for conversion has a minimum of 2-hour requirement, versus if it is a VTL or tape pool, we recommend a minimum of 4 hours of conversion each day. During the tape pool conversion, we will first choose tapes with the most reclaimable space. If any of those tapes are off-site, we will issue the normal message asking that tape be brought back on-site. And we'll use as many drives as the number of processes you specify in the server process field here in the wizard. The default is 8 drives. We do have a tech doc out there that covers in detail this conversion process. Another thing that's changed for the directory container pools is the ability to fine-tune how reclamation occurs on tape copies of directory containers. Directory container tape copies were introduced in version 7.1.7, and when we reclaim space off of a tape copy of a directory container, we don't mount the tape and then reclaim the space. We actually just create a new tape by pulling the data from the original directory container and writing it out to the new tape, and then freeing up the tape that was up for reclamation. Now, this reclamation takes part during the Protect storage pool process. And the Protect storage pool process really has 3 steps in it. The first is it goes through the delete phase, where it applies expired extents and chunks to existing container copies. And it's during that phase that the reclamation percentages of that tape might change. Next, we have the main protect step where we look for new and unprotected extents and chunks, and then those get queued up to be written out to the container copy volumes. Next, we have the reclamation phase where we look for filling or full container copies that could be reclaimed. So in version 8.1, we introduced the ability to determine what happens during that protect storage pool. Do we just want to write out new data to the tape copies, or do we also want to run the tape copy reclamation? Now you can specify no, which prevents the protect storage pool from running reclamation. You can specify only, which prevents the protect storage pool from running the main protect. You can do only limited, which has the same behavior as only, except the reclamation stops when it hits the reclaim limit. Or you can run yes limited, which has the same behavior as yes, except the reclamation will stop early if it hits the reclaim limit. Now the new reclaim limit can be set when you either define the storage pool or update that storage pool and add in reclaim limit equals. And this is going to specify the maximum number of volumes in the container copy storage pool that are reclaimed. So it determines how many new scratch tapes are available after reclamation processing completes. This reclaim limit will only be used if you specify either yes limited or reclaim equals only limited during your protect storage pool operation. In version 8.1, we've updated the way we do a register node. Now by default, when you register a node, we will no longer create a client owner administrative ID. Previously, when you did a register node, we would create both a backup archive client and the associated client owner administrative, and they would have the same ID name. This became a slight issue when we introduced our new LDAP configurations, because when an LDAP password expires, by default LDAP allows you only to update that password once per day. But if we had both a client node and an administrative ID trying to update passwords, you would only be able to update one of those in a 24-hour period. Now, when we do this register node, we will only create that node. However, you could add in the new option of -user ID and create either a user ID with the same name or a different name. In 8.1, we also make TLS 1.2 to be the default when you install and configure a new key database. In 8.1, the server startup and the key database will have a default name of TSM self-signed SHA key, and it will insert two options into the options file: SSL disable legacy TLS yes and SSL hide legacy TLS yes. And so this will have the effect of updating new Spectrum Protect installs to use TLS 1.2. If you have an existing Spectrum Protect server and you want to upgrade it to start using TLS 1.2, check out our documentation in the Knowledge Center and we'll walk you through how to update an existing Spectrum Protect server. And we've had that option out there for a while. In the Spectrum Protect Operations Center, we have also updated our Add Client wizard to now give you the choice of using authentication of either local or LDAP. LDAP is only going to show up as a valid option if there is an LDAP setup already in the Spectrum Protect server. You do need to have that client already defined out in LDAP before going through the Operations Center wizard to register it. You can view inside of the server properties by going into the Operations Center server details properties, the LDAP configuration if it has been set up on that Spectrum Protect server, and that is also new in version 8.1. Also in the Operations Center, if you plan on using buckets for either the Amazon or the Cloud Object Storage, the Operations Center will actually create and validate the buckets or the containers if you specify a name inside of the Add Storage Pool wizard. And it'll confirm that the admin has all the proper credentials to get backup data in and out of the cloud, for instance, read, write, and delete, if that bucket does not already exist. then the Operations Center will actually attempt to create that bucket. It allows the buckets to be created and configured manually by the user instead of using a default configuration and naming convention, and instead of having to go out and pre-configure those through the Amazon or Cloud Object Storage interface. This also allows multiple Spectrum Protect servers to share the same bucket. If you do use the command line interface, it will still behave as it did in version 7.1.7, and the command line interface does not go out and create or validate the pre-existence of the buckets. In version 8.1, we have dropped support for HP, Solaris, and P-Linux Big Indian for the Spectrum Protect server, and this is because our DB2 11.1 does not support those. Also, the minimum supported operating system levels on the remaining platforms have been updated, so you can take a look at that list here. For the client, we've added Ubuntu 16.04 and 14.04 support, as well as Windows Server 2016. We have dropped support on the Spectrum Protect client for HPUX Titanium, the Solaris Spark, older Mac releases, the Windows GPFS support, the P-Linux client packaging, and the Windows 32-bit, Windows 2008 and 2008 Release 2, Windows 7, and Windows 8. For the Spectrum Protect DB2 that we use underneath the covers, we have updated that to version 11.1. You don't need any fix packs or special builds for AIX Window or X Linux. For Z Linux, we do use DB2 11.1 with a special build of 35742. There are some new bundling agreements out there. So in 7.1x, we used Enterprise Server Edition plus the storage optimization features. In 8.1, we have an Advanced Workgroup Server Edition plus the High Capacity add-on. The High Capacity add-on removes the CPU and memory restrictions that were previously associated with the AWSC. In version 8.1 of the Spectrum Protect Backup Archive client, we are now using the Java Web Start technology to launch the Backup Archive web client. This is because we've seen that browsers are starting to drop support for Java plugins, starting with Java 9. With 8.1 and forward, you will see the Java Web Start will launch the dsm.jnlp. We have enhanced the command line interface output on the UNIX platforms. Now a query backup-detail or a query archive-detail will show additional output for the ACL size for UNIX if you are using that to backup Spectrum scale. We'll also show the media class, the volume ID, and the restore order. And so this information is required for user-defined optimized restore scripts, but the container pools do not return volume ID and restore order, so the values will be set to 0. This is an example of a query backup-detail from a Spectrum scale backup. Down here you can see our ACL size, media class, volume ID, and restore order. For HSM for Windows, we have dropped support for Windows Server 2008 and 2008 Release 2. We continue to support Windows Server 2012 and 2012 Release 2, and we're adding support for Windows Server 2016. Also on HSM for Windows, you'll see that we've improved our search and retrieve dialog. We wanted to be able to confirm that when we were searching the migrations inside of the Spectrum Protect server, if our search criteria was correct. We also wanted to have the ability to find and retrieve files that had been deleted from the file server in a cleanup job. Now the Dialog enhancements should help you avoid that no files being found due to false inputs being inserted in your dialog when you're doing those searches. Also, the backend server query has some new help buttons and some improved input for parsing. When we get to the result filter, you now have additional migration actions and additional migration times that you can add in for those result filters. We've also updated our include and excludes for the HSM for Windows so that when we're going through and processing the include exclude filters, we get rid of any unnecessary string comparisons. The migration job with include-exclude filters previously might have been slow, and so we've gone through and recoded that and how we go through and scan the file system. And so we've gone ahead and done some code refactoring to optimize the way we scan the file system. Another APAR that we're addressing is some environmental design guidelines. The problem was that the share of the Windows server might hang until the recall finished. And this happened particularly when you were recalling a large HSM for Windows stub file that maybe had greater than 1 gigabyte. And you were using the right-click copy and paste menu in the Windows Explorer on a Windows 7 client system. And when this would happen, that SMB or CIFS share was also unresponsive to other Windows clients. We do have a tech note that was published that you can take a look at that resolves this, and it does recommend that you set the registry key reg_d word to the value of 512. Okay, for the UNIX HSM, we've improved the scalability of recalls for your LTFS EE. We've improved the scalability of recalls for your IBM Spectrum Protect for space management when we're utilizing it in conjunction with Spectrum Archive EE. And this will work for the handling of trunk to null events, and that was moved from the master recall daemon to the worker recall daemon. If HSM is not integrated with Spectrum Archive EE, then the handling for this trunk to null event is still in the master recall daemon. Also in the UNIX HSM, we've improved the integration with Spectrum Scale. So previously, the HSM high availability function used 2 callbacks on each of the cluster nodes, and one indicated the active high availability mode, and one was used to indicate that HSM is running on a given node. And now in version 8.1, we've reduced that to 1 callback per node. That'll be used to indicate both the HA mode and that HSM is running on a given node. And this overall reduces the impact of the load that HSM client generates on large spectrum scale clusters. It eliminates error messages in the DSM error log for the case that the DSM watch daemon callback is issued from scale without root rights. However, the automated failure functions and features are not affected. And we do have more information out there on the wiki for that. So in summary, I've talked about the new enhancements on the Spectrum Protect version 8.1 server, Operations Center, Backup Archive Client, HSM for Windows, and Unix HSM platforms. Please check out my colleague Sean Sperry's video that covers the additional enhancements that were in the Spectrum Protect for virtual environments, ERP and snapshot, and the SQL and data protection for Oracle. Thank you.